There it goes. All right, guys. So it is time for our study group time. Cool. So today, of course, we are still with Course in Miracles, right here, Course in Miracles. See how thick that is. Like, we're literally, like, all of the weeks we've been doing this, we've literally only worked through like this much. So like, there's still like, we've only done this right here. So we still have all of this. So, but it's a process, right? It's a process. This is why I have 2 study groups, because there's a lot. It's going to take effort and like dedication to like get through all of this. And not only that, but I like to like, I'm obsessive about spirituality and like spiritual knowledge. So whenever I'm doing something like a study group or I'm reading through something, even my own personal time, I will like sit and like read and like break it down as much as possible so that I can understand it and grasp the concepts and so forth. So we are going over A Course in Miracles by Helen Schumann, and this one is the complete and annotated edition of the Course in Miracles. So there's the traditional one, which is the blue one. It's a lot smaller, and then there's this one, which is much thicker, but it's much more extensive, and it includes all of her notes when she was writing and channeling the material. And I think that's important because it puts a lot of things into context, where with the edited version, which is edited down, there's things taken out of context, and you can think it means something completely different from what she was understanding in the moment when she wrote it. So we are on page 62 of page 62. We're on chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the right defense and release from fear. The last time that we got on here and we were doing the study group, we were talking about possession, and a lot of people have like really interesting ideas around possession. And immediately when I say the word possession, people automatically think I'm talking about like the movie The Exorcist or some movie where, you know, people are going crazy and they're like spitting pea soup and whatnot. That's not what this is about. Now, it is discussed in the book, but this isn't technically about like the traditional idea of possession. And when you think of possession, the idea of possession is simply you kind of feeling so overwhelmed by a state of being that you act out from that state of being. And sometimes we get obsessed and we become infatuated, or we just take something to the extreme. And this, what we were talking about last time, is it broke it down into different types of possessions. You know, we have possession of things, where we're possessed with the accumulation of things like hoarders, etc. We have possession of the body, where we're obsessed with like the body or the sensations of pleasure. We're obsessed with the idea of being better than through like knowledge or through intelligence, or through, you know, position or status. And yes, it does also include possession of a spiritual nature, where it's more of your inner being kind of fighting itself. Because it's fighting itself, you essentially begin to express on the outside what that internal battle looks like, or what that internal process looks like. So that's the other type of possession. So I'm going to start off reading right here, and I'm going to break it down into concepts and such. If you guys would like to make a comment about the information in the book or the material or the concepts that we're working through, feel free to. Before I get off, I'll go and I will take a look at the questions about the material or the study group stuff, not personal readings. We're still going to have people popping in here who just figured out that I'm on live, and they're going to think I'm doing readings. So we just let those people, like, you know, bless their hearts, bless their hearts, because they missed the first thing. But if you have any questions or comments about the material in the book, I'm happy to hear, read, and also if you have questions regarding the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to go through and look for them as well. So starting on page 62, chapter 2, I'm going to read some of this, and then I'm going to come back and break it down, because there's a lot to break down here. Number 21. So it is emphasized here that these differences have no effect at all on the miracle, which can heal any of them with equal ease. This is because of the miracle's inherent avoidance of within error distinctions. Its sole concern is to distinguish between truth on the one hand and all kinds of error on the other hand. This is why some miracles seem to be of greater magnitude than others. But remember the first principle in this course. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. So the idea of miracles, because the book is called, Course in Miracles, by default, I automatically, when they say miracles, I automatically know that to mean synchronicities. So when we think of synchronicities, those are like miracles, because these things, random things coming together to create this situation or this experience, that is a kind of miracle. So whenever they talk about miracles, that's what I immediately hear in my head. Is I'm actually hearing synchronicities, alignments, etc. Manifestations. You can say manifestations, but I say synchronicities or alignments. So right here, what they're talking about, and what I wrote in my notes here, is synchronicities align to truth and errors. Errors contain inconsistencies and create conflict of manifestation, slowing or delaying full or efficient manifestations. Truth-based synchronicities are efficient and quicker to manifest. This is why some seem bigger to manifest than others. The error within the aligned person's challenge. Repeat that. The errors within the aligned person challenge the manifestation process and introduce variations of form. What I'm saying here is that many of us who have learned about manifesting our life and transforming things and intending, and then something being, created that matches up to our alignment, that matches up to our intent. Many times people who do not understand the levels of energy that reside within us, or that we sustain within us, people don't realize all of these different variations within us that support challenging circumstances. And we kind of have to either untrain ourselves, uncondition ourselves, and then recondition ourselves to align with the intent that we desire for ourselves, or we simply have to find a place of peace within ourselves about whatever, and still intend and work towards the desired goal. Here's an example, right? Here's an example. So for many years, and for those of you who don't know where I'm at, I'm in New Mexico. I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And for years, when we first came here, my partner and I, when we first came and visited New Mexico, fell in love with it. There was just like a majesty, this like enchantment. There's a reason why they call it the land of enchantment, because there's a lot of these experiences that you have here that you don't really find anywhere else. And they're these like very humbling experiences. But when we first came here, we fell in love with it. And we immediately already knew that this was home. So when we went back to Houston, we were trying to find a way to move here. And it wasn't the easiest process. And I was trying really hard to align my energy to the opportunity of moving here. But I didn't want to deal with challenges. I didn't want to deal with a lot of like stress and anxiety. I just wanted it to be a very simple and easy move. Of course, that's not what ended up happening. It took real work and effort. But for like 4 years, almost 4 years, we were trying to move here, and it wasn't happening. Opportunities were not being created for us. Let me change this up a little bit. Opportunities were not being created for us, and nothing was changing to make it easier for us to get here. But for us, this was like a dream place to live in. This was a place that we really desired. So whenever we would come here for vacation, I would immediately feel so happy and excited that we were here. And then within 2 days, even though I was here for like a week of vacation, within 2 days, I would start to feel crappy, and I would start to feel bad because we were going to be going back to Houston. So that there was messing with my energy, my state of being, because the state of being is based on what you believe, what you think or what you believe, what you feel, and how you act. And if you are only believing something but you don't feel it and you're not acting on it, then you haven't completed your state of being. If you're only taking action but you don't really believe something, or you don't really think something, then or feel something, is not completing the manifestation process. So for me, I didn't want to deal with challenging circumstances and struggle. I didn't want to deal with a bunch of these situations. So it really was difficult for me to find a way out of that state. And so after some time of learning more about manifesting and like ideal forms of manifestation, I decided to stop like wishing for a miracle, or like, an angel to descend from the heavens. Hey, here's your free ticket. Go to New Mexico, live there. Like I stopped waiting for those kinds of like miracles. And I just said, you know what can I do within my realm of control? What can I do to make it easier for us to be able to move? But also, how can I make myself feel like we're actually moving? Because we can talk about moving for years and years and years, but if we don't actually take any steps, if we don't actually do something that gives us the feeling of we're moving, then it's never going to happen. And it's just going to be something we talk about. So I started to work on this from an internal state of emotional state of change, but also from an action state as well. Because I believed I was going to move here. There was no doubt in my mind I was going to move here, and I believed it. But I needed to feel it, and that was the missing element. And then I needed to take steps, action steps, to also complete that, because that's my state of being. So I began to, first I gave myself these, I made a bunch of little changes in my life to help myself feel more connected to this place. So when I would sit in the back room of my house, my old house in Houston, we had a beautiful back room. It was a sunroom, and I could look out the window and I could see the trees in the backyard, but it was still a neighborhood. I could still see the neighbor's, house. I could still see this tree, all this other stuff. So nothing was really changing physically. But I needed to feel like I was here, because whenever I would come to New Mexico, we have these massive, the place we used to stay at had these massive windows. And these massive windows would give us such an amazing view of the landscape that I can't compare it to anything that I had in Houston. So when I would sit in front of the windows, I would sit there for hours and just look out the window and look at the mountains and look at, the animals going by, etc. I mean, I would do it for hours, just like let my mind wander into, infinity. When I got back to Houston, of course, that wasn't the situation. And so instead of sitting in the back room, looking out the window and only seeing my neighbor's house and saying, see, I'm not there, and giving myself grief or making myself feel awful because I wasn't here, I instead took a picture. One of my trips here, I took a picture from the window looking out at the landscape. I even also made a video of it as well, because I wanted to see moving, and I would play that on my flat screen TV in my living room. When I would sit in the living room on my days off, I would sit there in the morning, just like I would do in New Mexico, and I would put on the video of watching the landscape going by. And I would sit there and just look and pretend like I was in New Mexico, because that gave me a feeling like I was here. And I would have my cup of coffee like I would have here. It's the same thing. When I would sit in the back room and I was working, because I used to work on the table in the back room and do my appointments there, I would look out the window and just, let my mind wander. Here, when I was here, I wanted to do the same thing. So what I did was I took a picture of that same scene and I put it on my desktop, on my laptop computer as my wallpaper. So whenever I was working with clients and doing stuff, I'd see the picture. I immediately, when I saw the picture, I would tell myself, this is what I'm actually seeing out the window. This is what I'm looking at. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. And I would tap into that inner feeling that I would have when I was here, and I would envision it on the outside. So when I would look out the window in the back room, in my sunroom, I would see the visual in my head, not the actual outside. So that's another trick, those little kinds of tricks that I would do. I also started packing all of our stuff. We had a lot of stuff in the house, and so I bought a bunch of boxes, and I started packing everything and prepping it for the move. And that's what I did. And I would write on the box to Santa Fe, to Santa Fe, to Santa Fe. So we literally ended up, my partner got annoyed with us because he was like, you're boxing all our crap. And I was like, so? I'm like, I need to feel like we're moving. And there's nothing better to make you feel like you're moving or like you're making a change than by seeing moving boxes and seeing everything headed to Santa Fe. So we had a bunch of boxes set up in the living room for a while. And even though it drove him crazy, I felt like we were moving. I was like, okay. I also started telling all of my clients, hey guys, sorry, I'm not going to be doing in-person sessions anymore. Everything is going online because I'm moving and I want to be mobile. So people didn't like that, but I gradually did it over a 6-month period. Not only that, but I needed to make sure that my business would still be successful, or I could still have a sustainable business while still being able to be mobile and living here. And I wanted to, and this was a way for me to test this as well. So I went ahead and changed everything to online only, and I stopped seeing in-person clients, and I started having in-person sessions. I did away with the Reiki. I mean, I made major changes. And I'm like, okay, and I kept telling everybody, we're going to be moving in April. We're going to be moving in April. April's the month we're going to be moving, even though I had actually no plan to move in April, even though I had no arrangements made, etc., other than the moving boxes, other than these little visual things that I would do. So all of these things that I was doing, it was making me feel like I was, and I actually took physical steps. I made changes to my business. I was packing everything. Those are the physical steps, doing the visual steps, which gave me the emotional sense of being here. And then whenever we would, because we still came for vacation, when I would come for vacation, I actually wouldn't take vacation. I would just work a few days out of that vacation because I wanted to see what it actually felt like working from this place and looking out the window and seeing the mountains while I was working. So all of these things I used to do, and it was the mental state of I'm moving, I'm going to move. That was already a belief that I had and I held inside of me. And the emotional feeling of like waking up, having my cup of coffee and just being grateful for being here and seeing these views and having these beautiful skies, that was an emotional resonance that I triggered as well. And then also the physical steps as well. That's a full state of being. So all of these things that I did, and there's a lot more things that I did, but those are just some examples. All of these things that I did, that was my intent. And as I did that and I focused on that, it purified the creative manifestational energy, these synchronicities in my life. And I was able to not only move here, but we actually, even though we hadn't found a place, we found a place last minute, coincidentally, which is not as a synchronicity, which the setup of the house has had a very similar setup to the place we used to stay at when we were on vacation. We found that last minute, even though we had been looking for months, but within a few weeks of April, we found a place randomly online, and I got it, I swooped it up. Those these little synchronicities, little mini miracles is what I call them, that affirmed that my state of being was pure and that my intention was pure. So let's use another example. If you want to have a loving relationship or a stable relationship in your life, but every single relationship you've had has failed or has been challenging or difficult, or it's been not a successful one, been very difficult, toxic, etc. The minute that you say, I want a relationship like this, and you see someone or you see something that makes you want that, most people, they're not saying, oh my God, I want that kind of relationship, and they're changing their energy. Most people, as soon as they see that, whether on television, on a movie, or in someone else's relationship that they know, they immediately compare themselves to that situation. Because the moment they compare themselves to that situation, they basically reaffirm to the universe, I don't have that, and what I experience is very different from that. So they're actually shifting their vibration further away from it, not closer to it. So they're immediately having an emotional reaction to that. The minute that they think about love or a relationship and they immediately trigger an old memory of pain or suffering in a relationship, they're actually not lining up with this coming into their lives. They're actually pushing that further away. They're lining more up with what they've already sustained and possessed. So that's what they're doing. So if I want love and I deserve love and I want to have this kind of relationship, but I don't believe that exists. Well, then there's already one missing piece to the manifestation, the process of creating for you, the intention process, the state of being. There's one piece already missing. You don't believe it. Or if you believe it, I believe that I can have this. I believe that I can have this, but I don't really know what this looks like in reality, so I can't really relate to it. There's no emotional connection to what they want in their head, because what they're thinking they want, but what they actually feel, they're very disconnected. So they have to feel that and what that feels like as well. And you can get close to feeling it, but you have to associate with anything that's going to give you that sense of feeling. And most people don't. Most people actually have an emotional reaction against what they're trying to embrace. And then on top of that, I'm going to sit at home. I'm going to sit on my ass at home, watch TV, and wait for someone to show up at my door as Mr. Perfect. Or I'm going to wait for someone on the app to see my value and worth and message me, because I'm not willing to message them, be vulnerable, and risk rejection. Like already there's a misalignment with their intent. So in order for you to manifest something, you have to align all of these aspects of yourself, and you have to get in sync from a state of being standpoint. If you don't get in sync from a state of being standpoint, the manifestation will not happen. And in fact, if you have divergent feelings, or if you have thoughts, you have emotions, or you act in ways that contradict what you want, you're introducing a conflict and an error into the opportunity to manifest, into the mini miracle, into the synchronicities. You're introducing error. And so at that point, you're sending mixed messages. You're saying, to people that this is what you want. You're telling yourself this is what you want, but everything you're doing is going against that. And so you're going to have situations that do not align with what you're desiring or what you're trying to manifest. You're going to get the opposite, or going to get a really mixed bag of crap. And that's what tends to happen. So that's what we're talking about here. And that's what they're referencing here, is that when you are trying to align to a miracle, to a synchronicity, to a manifestation, but you have conflicts and error within you based on these different areas of your being, then you're basically, it's going to take longer for this thing to show up for you, if it shows up for you, because you're essentially introducing all of these errors or all of these conflicts of energy. And so it basically delays everything from happening. But if you get pure in it, like I was totally pure in my desire to move here, then it happens fairly quickly. And so even though it took me 4 years to commit myself properly, for 4 years I introduced error into my manifestation. But in the last like 6 or 7 months, I actually got intentional, and I got super focused on every way of my state of being, and it happened fairly quickly, and it lined itself up properly. So that's what we're talking about here. Number 22 on page 62, the emphasis on mental illness, which is marked in these notes, reflects the undoing aspect of the miracle. The doing aspect is, of course, much more important, but a true miracle cannot occur on a false basis. Sometimes the undoing must precede it. At other times, both can occur simultaneously, but you are not up to this at the moment. Further, insights into mental illness can be misused and can lead to preoccupation with one's own symptoms. This is why this area is less constructive for most people than a course primarily devoted to mental health. However, some professions will find some principles of mental illness constructive, especially those who are concerned with mental illness in others. The obvious includes psychologists. What I wrote about that was, mental illness and imbalances are based on false realities, which do not produce synchronicities. The releasing of the mental illness must occur first before a proper alignment process can occur. In other words, people who suffer from a mental illness, they are living from a state of unreality that has no basis in reality. So everything that they are believing and thinking and buying into, because there's no basis of reality in reality, essentially it's kind of like a false belief or a desired belief on top of a false belief. There's no structure there that can support that. This is why we have people who, if they believe in these crazy wild ideas, but these crazy wild ideas are based and designed to be supported by a foundation around other crazy and wild ideas that have no basis in reality, the surface level crazy ideas, or the beliefs that they have, they're just not going to happen, not going to occur, because they are already false to begin with because of their false support system. So there isn't anything there that can help them. There are people who suffer from mental illness where their reality is definitely warped and they don't have a grasp of what reality is. And when I say reality, I mean this basic elemental matrix structure, our physical world. Our physical world is designed to be sustained and to maintain itself in the way that it has, in the way that it will continue to do. Some people believe like, oh, if we all just ascend, then everything's going to transform and we're all going to live in this heavenly paradise. No, because this is a physical structure universe. It's designed to be this way so that we can experience the contrasting experiences of love and of joy, and also of suffering and of pain. It's designed this way. We come here for these experiences. So why would we all create a stage so that we can act on, and before we even act, or when we get on the stage and start playing our parts, then burn the stage down? Why would we do that? That doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing on the spiritual level. This physical matrix reality that is our physical environment, our world, my physical body, the wall behind me, all of this physicality stuff. This is a standard matrix that we all agreed on a soul level, as creation, as source. We all agreed this is the place to come and have these experiences at, to give ourselves these interesting opportunities to experience certain things. So we all agreed on it on a soul level, on a God level. when we get down here and we're human, we forgot all of that. So we're fools because we don't remember the reason why we did these things. We just got here and then we buy into the personality we become or are conditioned to become. I bought into the Ferny personality, even though that isn't who I truly authentically am from the highest state of point. This is just one tool, personality, that my soul is using to experience certain things. So we all agree that this is the reality. But when you have a bunch of people who believe in an alternate reality that has no valid perception from this level, they can believe in that and they can buy into that. But at some point, that alternate reality is going to slam against this reality, this basic level energy matrix that we all agreed on. Even those people, apart from their personalities in this lifetime, their souls also agreed to this as well. So they're going against their own higher self to create this alternative universe that doesn't actually exist. So they've bought into this alternative reality. They bought into all of these crazy wild ideas, and they're trying to support and sustain it with their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions. But it is a form of mental imbalance because they are completely ignoring the sub-matrix. They're completely ignoring this reality as it stands, agreed to by all of us. So there's at some point their reality bounces off against this reality, and they are kind of faced with a I am because of this belief system, or I am not, and I self-destruct. And that's what we're having right now. We're having a bunch of people whose realities are slamming against what isn't true, what isn't a basis in this physical reality. And so because of this, they are self-destructing, which again, and let's use the example of the guy who was just the bomber. If we are going to assume that he, blew himself up in his RV because he was trying to blow up the AT&T building, assuming that that's what that was about, because he was trying to stop 5G from infecting all of us. And the minute that, that exploded and the tower went up in flames, then everybody in that area was going to miraculously no longer have, COVID-19. If that was the reality, that first of all, the tower didn't blow up, but he didn't destroy that whole thing. Secondly, people are still getting sick with COVID in that area. Third, there's no noticeable difference. There isn't a measurable difference in the numbers. If you go looking at the numbers from beginning to end, before and after the explosion, there's no noticeable difference. In fact, there's an increase. So it's not the reality. It's an alternative reality, which means he was suffering from a mental illness. And that's what happens when you suffer in your life from something. And most people, and this is something that is actually pretty common, and a lot of people suffer from this, where the life that they've lived has been so challenging or so difficult, or they've suffered in some ways that is such to an extreme that they can no longer allow themselves to exist within that reality, which is, again, this physical reality. So instead, they adopt an alternate reality based on ideas or based on a belief system that gives them empowerment, makes them feel like they have some control over the reality, over the situation, makes them feel like they have an opportunity to change everything. And so they buy into this, and then they start taking actions and buying further into it and further, and it becomes this like tunnel vision thing. So that's what tends to happen. And this is what's going on here. So it is a type of mental illness. Doesn't mean the person's crazy. It means that they're suffering from a disorder that tends to happen. We all suffer from different types of disorders at different points in our lives. I know myself personally, when I was younger, I bought into a lot of different ideas around spirituality and ghosts and all this other stuff, because my reality growing up as an abused child, and as a person who was severely not only verbally abused, physically abused, sexually abused, but I was like teased incessantly. I was bullied incessantly. And that reality was, I couldn't accept it. I couldn't live in that world because it was so painful. So I created this alternate reality in the beginning stages of my spiritual development. And that reality became what it was, but it was a form of mental illness for me. And so once I actually brought peace to myself and made peace with life, I no longer needed that. But what was still true, what was actually real, that was based in something tangible, but that wasn't really a powerful part of that whole thing that I was buying into, it still showed up in my life. It still came into being in the physical world. That's why I'm still able to talk to spirits, because even though I had this whole belief system built up around that, when I actually made peace and came to healing, all of the falsehoods fell away. all of the alternative reality stories fell away, but the truth still exists. The truth still held, which means I still can communicate with spirits. I still have proof and evidence every time I do this for people that we exist beyond our physical bodies. So that's the truth that's held itself together despite these alternative realities that I bought into. And that's what I think is happening now is we have a lot of people who have bought into alternative realities, and those realities are butting up against the actual physical matrix that we set up for ourselves, all of us. And start streaming this thing finished here. And I lost all those questions. I literally lost all those questions, so it drops there. But Linda Ronstadt did this. She told her, she's like, I didn't just like start singing and then I was good at it and I got all these deals. She's like, I spent 6 or 7 hours a day singing, perfecting my talent. And people who, if you look at Selena's a perfect example of this. When you hear Selena as a child, her singing, she's all right, but it wasn't like she was on the level that she was at when she, in the last year of her life. When she was in the last year of her life, and you listen to the way she controlled and the way she was able to manipulate her voice, that took years of dedication. That took years of, really focusing on the work, focusing on the skill, focusing on all of that. She wasn't just trying to be famous. Yeah, she had her own personal goals and dreams and stuff like that, but she was still like honoring the skill, honoring that thing. And that's a big difference between, trying to manifest something, which if you're trying to manifest, getting it, being recognized for your skill, you're going to invest in the skill. You're not going to invest in being recognized. Right? You might need to do some advertising or promoting of yourself, but it's always going to come down to the skill. I don't spend hours each week focusing on trying to get recognized on social media. I don't do that. I focus hours each week using my psychic ability. That is my ultimate goal. That is my talent. That is what is the thing that I need to honor properly. I may get attention for it, I may get recognition for it, and that's going to come the way it's going to come, but that's not what I'm here for. Maybe when I was younger and I didn't have any self-esteem, maybe when I didn't value myself, I wanted to be this famous psychic. Today, it's not really about that. It's about honoring the skill, honoring the talent, honoring what I'm able to do, and I can do it well. So that's what it's about. Now, if I get attention, if I end up getting, recognized, so be it. But my life isn't going to be a complete disaster, or it's not going to be meaningful if I don't get that, because I feel like I'm fulfilling what I'm supposed to do every single day because I feel it inside of myself. So people like Selena, they work their entire lives to get to a pivotal moment that was the amplified form of their being, which was like, I believe it was the Astrodome performance where she did that performance there. That was it, girl. You're there. And I think she's about to be honored in the beginning of the year with a Grammy Achievement Award for a lifetime achievement. People say, she wasn't known, nobody knew her. I'm like, how dare you say that this person who spent like literally all their life dedicating themselves to this practice, to this skill, that they don't deserve a lifetime achievement when they spent their lifetime working to achieve that, but yet because they weren't mainstream or they weren't, they didn't cross over fully because they were in the process of that they don't deserve it because they were an unknown. How dare you? You're stupid. You don't understand what a lifetime achievement means. A lifetime is an actual lifetime of work. It's not a pivotal moment where you get to be on the MTV Music Awards. That's not a pivotal moment. It's this whole lifetime of stuff that you're doing. So to control is to want to force something into what you think it should be or the best version of it. To manifest something isn't about creating the manifestation itself, but doing all of the work behind the scenes that lead to the manifestation, having a vision for the manifestation, but not needing it to be exactly like your vision, just having it be your kind of guiding post, but then doing all of the behind the scenes work. That's what that means, okay? Robin's like, I am told to find peace in my physical pain. I get it. It's not easy, Robin. There are days where you're not going to have peace with your physical pain, and there are days where you will do much better. But just do the best that you can and try to make it work for you, even if it's only working halfway. Because at the end of the day, it is what it is. So if you can just make peace with it and then work through it as best as you can, you might end up your body may say, oh my God, she's no longer fighting the pain, she's no longer creating resistance to it. She's relaxing and just accepting that it is what it is. And in this, there's a change in your physical body that will happen as well. Because when we are stressed, when we're only focused on pain and suffering, we release all of these chemicals and all these hormones. There's a physical change that happens inside of you. So when you are just focused on trying to do the best that you can, be at peace with it as much as you can. Some days may be easier, some days may not, this is not going to happen. That's okay. But having, 30 more days of peace in your life in 1 year is going to be more worth it than having 365 days of misery and suffering. So 30 more days versus 365 days, there's something to be gained there. And if you can work on that, you're shifting your state of being, and you're going to start to see something going differently in your life as well. And people may start showing up who may actually make your pain less painful. People may show up who offer you advice or guide you in ways that may change that for you as well. Because you're going to start to pull in a manifestation. You're going to start to pull in something that aligns with your state of being. Tiffany's like, do you think others' energy plays a part to things that happen to us? Only if you accept that that has a direct effect on you. Because in the beginning, when I first started to do this work and I would deal with clients, immediately attach myself to their situation. I felt responsible for their suffering, and I felt it my own personal responsibility to try to fix it or to try to go into their lives and do something to make it better for them, because I don't like people suffering. I don't want people to suffer. I had a big problem with this back when I was a Starbucks store manager, because even though I've had people who worked for me, I saw the pain that they went through. I saw the struggles that they had in their personal lives, and I wanted to offer them a way out of that. But instead of teaching them or letting them rise up to the occasion, I would try to fix it for them or do something on their behalf, and it always blew up in my face. And I always ended up regretting or resenting the person instead. So when I decided to step back, just offer what I can offer without taking responsibility for their stuff, at that point, they were either going to rise or they weren't. And if they didn't rise, that was on them. There's nothing that I could do to make that different. And I just accepted and operated from a state of, well, this is where they're at. This is their reality. That's what I accept. That's how I'm going to take. Ferny, why are you treating me like I'm not management material? Because you're not rising to the occasion of being in charge. You're not taking accountability and responsibility for the opportunities you have to run the show when I put you in charge. So I'm not going to treat you like a manager because you're not a manager. You haven't even done that for yourself. How can I treat you like that as well? So when you have people in your lives, loved ones, siblings, etc., who they are the way they are, you can take responsibility for their stuff and make yourself accountable to that and guilt yourself into submission to what's supposed to be happening. I had this conversation with one of my cousins. I'm sorry, one of my cousins. He was, because my sister Irene and I were we got a pretty good relationship. My youngest sister Karina, we don't really have much of a relationship. I think it's starting to maybe something might be changing there, but she still has her own very separate life. I have my own separate life. I've only seen my nephew, her son, twice in the last 7 years. That's how separate we are. It's not because I don't like her or because I don't love her. I actually love the girl to death. She was my favorite growing up. My other sister that I'm close to, I hated her guts. I couldn't stand her. So it kind of flipped when we got older. But my youngest sister, she was my favorite because she actually reminded me of my mom. She's just like my mother, actually. But there's a lot of energy there. And so I was explaining this to one of my cousins, and I said, I wish, my cousin's husbands, I was like, I wish we had a relationship, but we don't really have much of a relationship, and that's okay. I still love her. I'm not gonna hate her or anything for that. He's like, no, you need to have a relationship. You're the older brother. You're responsible for holding the family together. You're responsible for helping to guide her back into having a relationship with the family and this and that and all this other stuff. And I was like, why? Why is that my responsibility? He says, because you're the older brother. I'm like, where is it written that is going to make anything better? Where is it written, and where are the examples that actually works? It might work sometimes, but there's a lot of times it doesn't work. And so when we take too much responsibility for other people and their decisions and choices, because I'm not forcing my sister to stay away. She just has her own life. She does her own thing. That's fine. I'm not taking responsibility for that. That's her choice. That's her decision. I'm just going to respect it. And, there have been a few times where she's like, we need to get together. Or I'm like, you don't do that. You're not going to try. I'll try. You're not going to try back. You're not going to come forward and try to have a relationship with the rest of us. So that's on you. And until you own up to that or until you take responsibility for that, that's still on you. I'm not going to hold myself to a different standard than you hold yourself to. And that's the way it is. And that's what I told my cousin's, husband. I was like, no, I'm sorry. Just because I'm the oldest child, just because I'm the older brother, doesn't make me responsible for everything that my siblings are doing. They're still accountable to themselves. They're still responsible for themselves. So I'm only accountable to what I can participate in and what I can achieve or what I can do directly. So there are people around us, loved ones, etc., who they're just not going to act or behave or be the way that we would ideally expect them to, or we believe they should. But then who is to blame there? Is it them because they are not who you think they should be? Or is it your fault because you're holding a standard to them that is not befitting of who they are as a person? Stop trying to force them to be something that they're not, but you think that they should be because it says it here in this movie or because the book says this or whatever. No, this is who the person is. Accept it, move on. Stop worrying so much about who this person is choosing to be. Honor and accept that is who it is. You'll have a better relationship because of it, if you have a relationship. So that's how that works. Rushing Shen is like, should those that suffer from mental illness take meds for life to be on the right reality plane? Here's the thing, mental illness, there's different variations of mental illness. When someone is a schizophrenic, the mechanisms in their brain are not functioning or working properly. And so at that point, that can become a very dangerous situation for not only the individual themselves, because they can self-harm, but also for the people around them. In my family, they did not want to accept or acknowledge my mom being ill. They thought, she just wants attention or she's possessed by the devil. They even took her to a church. And it wasn't until they actually took her to a doctor and she was diagnosed and she was put on medication that she was able to find a new balance. The person that I knew as my mother, that person, that energy, that personality, that's gone. That ended when she had her first breakdown. But the person she became, that's a new energy. That's a new state of being for her. And that's who she is supposed to be in her life right now. So even though I, for a period of time, resented and regretted that she had to be this way, always drugged up, always taking 17,000 medications, this is the path that God has established for her. She is on the path that she needs to be on. So it doesn't matter what I want or what I resented or didn't resent or what I preferred or didn't prefer or whatever. She is who she needs to be. If she's not on her medication, it completely can put her in jeopardy, and it can put a lot of people around her in jeopardy, because when she was going through the worst of it, she kept saying, these people keep telling me to take the knives and to cut people and to cut people's throats. That's the crazy stuff that happens when you're suffering from that kind of a mental illness. And so that fight inside of her, she just wasn't winning it. And so she needed to be on medication. People who are that ill, mentally ill, who no matter what happens, they don't really have periods in their life where they're stable or they can operate from a balanced perspective. They just always have this condition. That's no different than someone who was born with a leg that is backwards, or born with a heart that is backwards, or born with a form of a genetic disease or something like that. That's no different than that. So that person needs to find the best path that they can do what they can do with. It's whatever they can do in that situation, in that mindset, that's what they can do. So that person needs to be on medication. There are other people who they use medication as an escape, or they use drugs as a way to not be a part of this reality, or they want to check out. And I get it. I understand that. God knows that this year has definitely given me plenty of those experiences where I'm like, I want to check out of this reality for a little while. But that doesn't mean that it should be something we should be doing every single moment of every single day. There's nothing wrong with having a little drink on a day, or a glass of wine, when it's just been a rough day and you just need to deflate, or you just need to kind of settle down and chill, and your normal traditional methods of doing so aren't just working for you. It's okay to have a glass of wine. You're not going to go to hell, because there is no hell. But if you start drinking wine every single day, 24/7, you literally are trying to escape life. And at that point, you are suffering from a mental illness, you're suffering from a condition, and you need to find a way out of it. And sometimes it may not help to try to do it through a 12-step program or 10-step program. Sometimes you have to go on medication to help you with the anxiety. So it depends on the individual, but there's no broad, understanding about who should be on medication and who doesn't need it, and some people, they don't need to be on medication, but they are on it because they're addicted. Some people need to be on medication sometimes because without it, they might have an imbalance. And actually right now, because of COVID, a lot of people have had psychotic breaks because of they're finding a lot of interesting things that the virus is doing to people. And one thing that they're finding is that people who have had COVID after that, some people end up having these psychotic breakdowns, and they've never had mental illness in their lives. And it's because it's done something to their physical body and it's manipulated or affected something. So they are having to find a new way to cope with that. And those people probably don't want to go on medication because they've never suffered from that. So it's like, I've never suffered from this. This is not something that I deal with. I don't want to go on medication. But they may need to, because it may not be, the situation has changed. There's nothing you can do to avoid the fact that this is what's happening. So you just need to deal with it the very best that you can. And that's it. That's the most that you can do. Some people, they only need to go on it for a little while. Some people, like my mother, they need to be on it for their entire lives. Yeah, Natalie Garcia, the book is called The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown. Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown. All right, guys, I think I'm coming to the end of the road. Let's see, I had to take meds for depression eventually, and I was able to get off of it. I learned to be sad without spiraling. When I was younger, and I'm very open, guys. I try to be as open and honest with you guys as possible. I don't want y'all thinking that like I'm walking around and I'm this perfect guru. I mean, if you saw some of my posts this year, I definitely am not perfect. I am human to the core, and I embrace my human.